Need some new Modern Horizons cards? Well, you can pre-order them from our sponsor Card Kingdom by heading over to cardkingdom.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Modern Horizons 2 spoilers, and today marks the official kickoff of spoiler season. So for the next week and a half, we're going to have Modern Horizon 2 spoilers every day. Today we have some really sweet mythics, some interesting stuff, so we should probably jump right into it. Start talking sweet new MH2 cards. Before I do, just a super quick reminder, if you ever wanted to catch up on the spoilers of the day, you can find them all over at MTGPreviews.com. Anyway, let's talk sweet new Modern Horizons 2 cards, starting with a mythic legendary squirrel, Chatterfang Squirrel General. So Chatterfang, 3 mana, 3/3, legendary squirrel warrior. It has Forest Walk, of course. I mean, it's a squirrel. And then if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens are created instead. So it kind of like sort of doubles up your tokens like a Parallel Lives, but instead of directly copying the tokens, you're getting squirrel tokens, and then you can play it back, sack X squirrels to give target creature plus X, negative X until end of turn. So Chatterfang, I mean, this card is important for a bunch of different reasons. The biggest is people absolutely love squirrels. Like, one of the biggest cult followings I've seen in Magic is Magic players who just love the squirrel tribe. It's kind of like a funny meme tribe, like squirrels versus Emrakul or whatever. People just love squirrels, and we don't get them very often, and we have never really had what I would consider a true squirrel commander. Yes, I know. They printed a legendary squirrel in Toski, and Toski, it's a really powerful card. It's an incredibly powerful card, but it doesn't actually really refer to squirrels. I mean, if you want to build a Toski deck, you're actually better off not playing squirrels and just playing go-wide evasive creatures. Chatterfang is a squirrel commander that actually refers to squirrels and gives you a payoff for having squirrels in multiple ways. So my guess is this is going to go down as one of the most popular commander cards from the set. I think that you're going to see a lot of squirrel decks popping up because people just love the tribe, and Chatterfang is perfect. If you look at what squirrels do and what they do well, they make tokens. There's only a handful of squirrel cards throughout Magic's history. Almost every single one of them makes squirrel tokens in one way or another, from Chatter of the Squirrel, to Druid's Call, to Squirrel Wrangler, Deep Forest Hermit, Deranged Hermit, Nut Collector. Essentially, all of these cards, the best squirrel cards in Magic, are making squirrel tokens. If you happen to have your Chatterfang out to go along with them, these cards become insane. Like Chatterfang, and then you cast Deranged Hermit, you're going to make 8 squirrel tokens. 8 squirrel tokens, and they're all getting pumped by Deranged Hermit. Same with Deep Forest Hermit. You can just really go off. So I feel like Chatterfang is the perfect squirrel general for your commander deck. We also got a bunch of new squirrel cards to support it, which are going to be important for Modern. In Modern, there are like, I think 5 squirrel cards, and most of them are not good, and one of them are Swarm Yard. So there's just not really a way to build a squirrel deck before Modern Horizons 2. But now, thanks to Chatterfang and more new additions, I'm not saying there's going to be a good squirrel deck. I don't think we're breaking the format. We're not going tier 1. But I do think we can build a functional, win some games once in a while, really cool squirrel deck because of Chatterfang and the other new additions like Squirrel Sanctuary. Squirrel Sanctuary doesn't look like much, just a 1-mana enchantment. When it comes into play, you make a 1/1 squirrel, but when a non-token creature you control dies, you can pay 1, bounce it back to your hand. So obviously, maybe it could work on some sort of Enchantress deck as an enchantment that you can cast multiple times to keep drawing cards. But really, this is kind of like a Chatter of the Squirrel. You play this, you get a squirrel token, something dies, you get it back, make another squirrel token, 2 if you have Chatterfang going. We also got a really important addition in Squirrel Sovereign. So we have expensive Squirrel Lords, like the Deranged Hermit or Deep Forest Hermit. They're 5 mana, they make squirrels, they pump squirrels. Squirrel Sovereign's a little different. It's just a 2 mana Squirrel Lord, so this comes down and it pumps all of your 1/1 tokens, the extra ones you're making from Chatterfang as well, and allows you to actually close out the game with your 1/1s. So that's another massive addition. We also got Ravenous Squirrel, which I don't know about Ravenous Squirrel in Modern. A Golgari hybrid 1 mana 1/1. When you sack an artifact or a creature, you put a counter on it, you can pay 3 mana to sacrifice an artifact or a creature to grow it. I don't know if squirrels are going to have a sacrifice sub-theme. I mean, they do in Modern Horizons, but if you build them in Modern, I don't know how much you're building around the sacrifice aspect, but still, it's a 1-drop that can get pretty big throughout the course of the game as you're sacrificing stuff. And we also got a squirrel reprint. So Squirrel Mob, it's from Odyssey. It is a very strong squirrel card. It's not modern legal until now, thanks to Modern Horizons. Squirrel Mob just is a 2/2 for 3, but it gets +1/+1 for each other squirrel on the battlefield. If you can add in some of the token producers we've been talking about, along with Chatterfang to double up those tokens, Squirrel Mob can easily be like a 3-mana 20/20 or something just obscene in a squirrel deck. So when you mash all this together, I think you end up with something like this. This is my first take as Squirrel Tribal. I will link this deck in the description of the video. Is Squirrel Tribal going to be good? I would say it is a functional against the odds style deck. I wish it would be a budget deck. It is sadly almost $2,000, which seems insane, but that is because Modern Horizons cards are very inflated at the moment, so don't take that price seriously. Please, 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 please. But you got a reasonable curve. You get multiple lords if you add in Metallic Mimic in the 2-drop slot. You get Deep Forest Hermit as a big payoff. You get Squirrel Mob. You get Chatterfang, some Realm Walker action, Toski to draw cards. So I definitely think we'll be playing squirrels in the near future. Whether or not they actually win many games, that's to be determined. But as you can see, you can make a really functional looking 60-card deck where every single creature is a squirrel. The other thing about Chatterfang, it doesn't care specifically about you making squirrels. It just cares about you making any tokens, and then you get squirrels as a bonus. So you could play this as a payoff in a token style deck. You play this in green-white tokens. You cast a Spectral Procession. Instead of getting 3 1/1 spirits, you're going to get 3 1/1 spirits and 3 1/1 squirrels. Same with like Raise the Alarm or March of the Multitude. So maybe there's some potential playing this in just like green-white tokens, Abzan tokens. Most importantly, Chatterfang finally answers the age-old question: how many squirrels does it take to beat an Emrakul? The answer? Apparently 15. 15 squirrels sacrificed to Chatterfang's last ability, enough to kill an Emrakul. So, in case that's something I've been keeping up at night, Wizards finally answered that question. Oh yeah, also, infinite combo potential, Pitiless Plunder, Ashnod's Altar, do some sacrificing of creatures, which is going to make you a treasure with Pitiless Plunder and a squirrel with Chatterfang, so that gives you infinite mana. Then you'll win the game somehow with a Blood Artist or something. So all kinds of shenanigans with Chatterfang. So I feel like Chatterfang and the rest of our new squirrel editions, whether or not they have a huge impact on Modern, I don't really care, because people love the squirrel tribe. Worst case, this is going to allow for Squirrel Commander to be a real thing. Just adding more squirrels in general is a big deal, because like I said, there's very few squirrels in existence throughout Magic's history, not enough to make a full commander deck, so just getting more tribe members is huge. Getting Chatterfang itself as a real squirrel legend to be the leader of your commander deck is huge, so I'm really hyped for this. I don't really care if squirrels are good or not. People are going to build them. It's going to be fun. They're cute. It's a really sweet tribe. There's memes involved, so great addition to Modern Horizons 2. We also got a new uncommon removal spell in Prismatic Ending. So Prismatic Ending, 1 white and X, sorcery. It has Converge, and you exile a non-land permanent if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. So if you cast this for 1 white mana, you can exile something that's 1 or 0 mana. If you cast this for 5 white mana, you still exile something that's 1 or 0 mana. If you cast this for Wooburg, 1 of each color of mana, you can exile something up to 5 mana value. I think this is a relatively good removal spell. I don't think it's going to show up in main decks in Modern, but I think it does have potential. We've seen Isolate show up in Modern sideboards. Just 1 mana, exile a permanent, convert a mana cost of 1. Prismatic Ending, downside is it's a sorcery. Upside is it gets things that are 1 or 0 mana. Plus it has a lot of flexibility where if you are 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, you can maybe snag bigger things as well. On the other hand, we do have Portable Hole coming, which just gets any non-land mana value 2 or less for a single mana. But Portable Hole, if your opponent kills it, they get their thing back. Prismatic Ending gets rid of it forever. And there are plenty of targets for this. People have been talking about it as a way to get rid of Chalice of the Void. Chalice of the Void on 1 counters anything with the mana value of 1. Well, if you're playing, let's say even mono white, you don't have 2 colors of mana, you can intentionally pay more mana with your Prismatic Ending, like pay 2 mana so the CMC is high enough that you don't get countered by Chalice of the Void. You snake Rest in Pieces cheaply, you snake Monastery Swift Spears. So while I don't think this is a revolutionary new spell that's going to change Modern or anything like that, I do think it's possible that Prismatic Ending can find a way into its sideboard as a way to answer hate cards with a lot of flexibility and get rid of them forever rather than some other options which only get rid of them until the card leaves the battlefield, which is a drawback in some scenarios. So nothing groundbreaking here, but a pretty solid removal spell coming in Modern Horizons 2. Next up, we have a new white mythic in Serra's Emissary, and this card is pretty bonkers. So 7 mana, 7/7 Angel. When it enters the battlefield, choose a card type. You and creatures you control have protection from the chosen card type. So first thing I thought of when I saw Serra's Emissary is this is kind of a twist on Iona Shield of Emeria. Iona, you choose a color, you shut down your opponents from even casting spells of that color. Serra's Emissary doesn't stop your opponent from casting anything, and it hits card types rather than color, which is probably less powerful depending on the situation, but can still be very, very strong. But you can kind of see the comparison. This massive flying threat that also can really disrupt your opponent. The question is, how do you actually get it on the battlefield? Once it's on the battlefield, it's absolutely insane, but 7 mana is a lot. My guess is maybe you're reanimating it, giving Unburial Rights. Maybe you could be like Mono White Devotion with Nykthos, but you are going to need a plan for this. Don't just slam it in your random green white deck and trust that your Noble Hierarchs are going to get the job done, because that's not super practical. Modern is a fast format. On the other hand, I think this actually compares relatively favorably to some other reanimation targets. If you look at popular Modern reanimation targets, Griselbrand probably still the undefeated king of reanimation, just because it's so likely to win you the game with its card advantage. But Iona's on the list, Elesh Norn's on the list. I think you can argue that Serra's Emissary, while different than both of those cards, might be just as powerful when you look at what it can do. And remember, we saw Unmarked Grave from Modern Horizons 2, a Entomb, essentially, that only hits non-legendary cards. Serra's Emissary is non-legendary. If we get a powerful reanimation spell that's focused on non-legendary cards, like maybe we get a Reanimate or an Animate Dead that only hits on non-legends, then Serra's Emissary goes way, way up in value. Because I do think when you consider the Elesh Norn, Iona, Griselbrand, those are all legends. Serra's Emissary has got to be one of the top-tier non-legendary cards that you can reanimate in all of Magic. So what does this do once you get on the battlefield? The answer is, it's really insane. What you pick is going to depend on the matchup, but let's say you're up against Heliod combo. You name creature, or I guess you could name artifact, but probably creature, and that's going to shut down the Walking Ballista ping kill. Not only does it shut down Walking Ballista from pinging you to death, it's going to keep it from killing the Serra's Emissary as well. So until your opponent draws like a Path to Exile, they're essentially just hard locked out of the game. Maybe you're up against some sort of Gruul beatdown deck. Naming creature, it's probably just going to win the game. Your opponent can't deal damage to you with their creatures because you have protection from them, and then you can attack your opponent with your creatures because they can't block them because they have protection from the card type. Your opponent's going to need, what, 3 lightning bolts? Or like humans. Humans don't have that much removal. If you get this down naming creature against humans, what are they going to do? They're probably just going to lose the game unless they hit a Reflector Mage or something. So the ability is really, really powerful, and that doesn't even include the other options. Like, maybe you're up against Storm. You can name Grape Shot and shut down sorceries. You're up against a Primeval Titan deck. You can name Land to shut down Valakut. Maybe you're up against Charbelcher combo or Upalt Sol spells. You can name Artifact and shut down the Charbelcher kill. Worst case, if you're worried about, let's say, Path to Exile, you can just name Instant to protect your Serra's Emissary from your opponent's most common removal spell, and then all of a sudden your opponent can't deal with any of your creatures. And I think this card also has commander potential. If you are playing an Angel deck, I think you just always play this. It's a great addition to any Angel Tribal deck, probably in the conversation for Reanimator decks as well. It is that powerful. This card is absurd. I really like this card. So is this card broken? I mean, it's 7 mana. It's hard for a 7 mana card to truly be broken in a format like Modern because you got to do a lot of work to get it into play. It's not going to show up all that often. You got to be Reanimator, you got to be ramping, you got to have some plan to get it on the battlefield. But once Serra's Emissary hits the battlefield, oh my goodness, are good things going to happen for you, and your opponent is going to have a really difficult time killing you or getting out from under it. So I really like this card. Maybe the best Serra's card that we've ever seen, and a really sweet new addition to Modern. We also got some new mill action, Fractured Sanity. So Fractured Sanity, 3 blue mana, sorcery, each opponent mills 14 cards. You can also cycle it for 2 mana, and when you cycle it, each opponent mills 4 cards. Normal version, sketch version. Apparently these sketch versions are controversial. I've heard some people really don't like them. I really like them. I like the minimalistic colors, I think, around the border. I think it looks really sweet. So Fractured Sanity, it's a really good mill spell. If you look at mill spells that see play in Modern, Archive Trap is number 1. Archive Trap, because of fetch lands, is usually mill 13 for 0. That is going to be undefeated as far as the best mill spell in Modern. But the 2 backups that actually show up in competitive decks, Meta and Cacophony and Glimpse the Unthinkable, when you think about what those cards actually do, like let's take Glimpse the Unthinkable for example. 2 mana, mill 10. Fractured Sanity is 3 mana, mill 14. It's very similar on rate. For Glimpse the Unthinkable, you will 1 card for every 0.2 of a mana you spend. Fractured Sanity, you mill 1 card for every 0.215 or something like that of the mana you spend. So you're almost getting the same rate as the very playable mill spells in the format. Plus you have this upside where maybe you're not ready to win the game. Maybe you need a removal spell to deal with what your opponent's doing, or a wrath or a counter spell. You can cycle this, get a little bit of milling out of it, which is still pretty reasonable. Milling 4 for 2 and drawing a card's not bad, and maybe find the action that you need. So that flexibility is really, really huge. Also, speaking of the cycling mode, even better in tutelage style mill decks. And these decks have mostly been budget Magic decks. They haven't been decks that have taken off at the top tier of the format, but like Sphinx's tutelage, Teferi's tutelage, these are powerful mill cards that specifically care about you drawing cards. Fractured Sanity can be a way to draw cards and mill. Like let's say you got down a Teferi's tutelage and you cycle this, you're going to mill 2 from tutelage, mill 4 from Fractured Sanity, and draw a new card to maybe do it again. Sphinx's tutelage, you can double hit, so you're getting twice as much value out of your mill if you're playing this style of card. And then if you get your opponent low enough on cards, you can always just cast a Fractured Sanity to get rid of the last 14 cards in your opponent's library. The other interesting aspect of this card is its triple blue mana cost. There's an old card called Sanity Grinding, which is triple blue. It has Chroma, this weird pseudo devotion style mechanic where you reveal the top 10 cards of your library, and for each blue mana symbol you reveal, a target opponent mills that many cards. So let's say you want to build a mono blue mill deck. Now that you have Sanity Grinding and you have Fracture Sanity and you have Archive Trap as 2 blue mana symbols, maybe you throw in Cryptic Command just because it has a lot of mana symbols, it seems like that could be a new style of mill deck, especially if you throw Fraying Sanity into the mix as well to double up your milling. But it would only take a couple of spells potentially to mill your opponent out, and now that we have 2 triple blue 3 mana mill spells, the value of Sanity Grinding actually goes up a lot. The challenge of Sanity Grinding is not that it's not powerful, it's that it's hard enough to have enough blue mana symbols to make it work. Well, now with Fractured Sanity in the mix, it seems like it gets a lot easier. So maybe it might finally be time for a mono blue mill shell to work in the Modern format. So I like this card. It's just a mill card, but it is a good mill card. It compares pretty well to some of the already played mill cards in the format, and it has the upside of cycling, and it turns on tutelage mill decks, mono blue mill decks. So a really cool new take on a mill card that probably is going to be good enough for Modern. We also got a weird one, Wonder. So Wonder, this is a reprint. It's been around for a long time. It's been reprinted a bunch of times. A 4-mana 2/2 incarnation with flying that, as long as it's in your graveyard and you control an island, creatures you control have flying. So you probably noticed Wonder, it's a rare in Modern Horizons when it's always been an uncommon. Well, this is a rare with a twist. People were kind of complaining about it being rare. Wizards confirmed that there's a reprint slot in your Modern Horizon booster packs, where new to Modern reprints will show up. And these cards are essentially bonuses. If you get a wonder in your pack, it is not going to be replacing your rare. It's just a rare from the new to Modern reprint slot. So you could technically get 2 rares, which makes the rarity make a lot more sense. I was feeling a little bad, like, do I really want to open a wonder in my incredibly expensive booster pack in my rare slot? But Wizards apparently thought of that and fixed that issue. So think of these as bonus rares. As far as wonder itself, it can be really powerful. It's a card that you don't really want to ever cast. You want to get it into your graveyard. It sometimes shows up back in like Legacy or Vintage, in Hollow and Vengevine style decks. Hollow and Vengevine decks really good at getting things in the graveyard. Well, you can just discard your wonder to some sort of like Faithful Suiting effect, and then all of a sudden, once you get your Hollow ones and your Vengevines going, they're all going to have flying, making it impossible for most decks to actually stop your aggressive attacks. So I think that maybe we can do something like that in Modern, although I will say, if there's one thing I know about Modern, decks are prepared for graveyards, so I don't think this is going to break anything, because almost every deck has some sort of answer to graveyards, because there's some really powerful graveyard decks. Also, I guess, technically, a good reprint for Commander, although you can get Wonder for less than $1, so it's not an expensive card, but a lot of Commander decks that have graveyard themes, Madrolthas, Sidisi's, or Ramis, play Wonder just for value. Get in your graveyard, give your team flying, like, that's pretty easy. So it's a card you don't ever want to cast, but if you can get in your graveyard, have that island, it is a powerful static effect. It's just always odd. So would have been complaining about it being a rare if it wasn't for the new to Modern reprint slot. But with the new to Modern reprint slot and this being a bonus, that's a sweet new addition to Modern. Finally today, in the world of lower rarity cards, bunch of stuff that's mostly limited fodder, although a couple things to mention really quickly. Late to Dinner, apart from having amazing flavor, is maybe the best mono white reanimation spell ever printed. Just 4 mana, reanimate any creature in your graveyard, and you get a food token as a bonus. Basically just better resurrection, a zombify with upside, and it's a common if that matters to Pauper, but definitely if you're playing a non-black reanimator deck in Commander, this is probably going to be a part of it. Break Ties, a lot of flexibility, hits an artifact enchantment, or it exiles a creature from the graveyard, or you can reinforce a creature with a +1/+1 counter. 3 mana is kind of a lot though, probably keeps it from seeing play in a format like Modern. Spreading Insurrection, a new Storm card. Storms and Threatens. Gains control of a creature you don't control. Untap it, give it haste. I could see this having potential in, like, Steel and Sack Commander decks. If you're playing, like, Temerat or Graven or Brian Stoutarm deck, where your goal is to yoink your opponent's creatures and then sacrifice them, Spreading Insurrection is kind of sweet, because if you can cast a couple spells, this can be one card that steals 2, 3, 4 creatures, then you sack them all to a sacrifice outlet. So worth keeping in mind for those decks, although I'd be surprised if it showed up in Modern. We also got a little uncommon that we missed the other day in Flame Tongue Yearling. So this is a card that I don't think it's actually going to see a ton of play, but it's a sweet callback to Flame Tongue Kavu. You even got the same exact positioning in the artwork, so really cool callback to FTK, an iconic card in Magic. Is this going to see Modern play? No, probably a decently high pick in Limited though. Finally today, some old border Modern Horizon 1 reprints, which, remember, only go in collector boosters, so you won't get these in your normal boosters, but if you buy a ungodly expensive collector booster box, you might snag 1 or 2. So, big winners today, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, really good in Enchantress Commander decks, currently around $7 for the original. Sword of Truth and Justice, I never really seen anyone play it. It's definitely a lower tier sword in terms of playability, but it's still like $20, $25 for the original. Some good lore rarity stuff. Ingenious Infiltrator, one of the best ninjas in Magic. Fairy Seer has surprisingly seen some play in Modern. Universal Automaton, if your Changeling deck, works well since it's all creature types. So these are cards that I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of pricey. Since they only show up in collector's boosters, the supply's probably going to be low. We already know that people love these old border cards, so if you do crack a collector booster box and get some of these cards, make sure to check the prices, because I would not be surprised if they're worth a little bit more than you thought. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Modern Horizons 2 spoilers for today. So, what do you think of Squirrels? How excited are you for the tribe to finally get support? Are they going to make it a modern? Are you going to build Squirrel Commander? What about Serra's Emissary? Is that our new Iona? Replacement Iona for Commander? Can it show up in modern? How busted is it? What can it shut down? How can you get it on the battlefield? Can Fractured Sanity make Tutelage Mill a thing? Or Mono Blue Mill a thing? Or just show up in the normal top tier mill decks? What about Wonder? Can that do anything in modern? What do you think about the new to modern reprint slot? 2 rares in a pack potentially. All the old border reprints, let me know what you think about those as well. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll be back tomorrow to talk more Modern Horizon 2 spoilers. So until then, have an amazing day, everyone, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.